Buddy, my name is West Coast Fred, and I'm making a video based on a post on my Facebook page, really a friend's Facebook page. I'm not going to say who she is because you know what? I don't want you bombarding on her. I don't want you bombarding her with more than what she already has. But shout out to D. How you doing? But this is just basically the topic of the day is diversity in movies. Diversity in movies is a great thing. Now, the only time I feel that certain group of people have a problem with it is when they're called out on their bias and bullshit. So, here's the thing. Hollywood, for the most part, not exclusively, but I think a lot of funding and power and influence, Hollywood's ran by white men and white Jewish men, or Jewish people in general. And I feel like it's when women, people of color, men and women, and trans, lesbian, and even white women to a certain degree, actually heavily, I think, they start to have a problem in the lack of representation, because there's a lot of regardless of what you see a lot of Hollywood, regardless of whether it could be down from the actor to the producer to the screenwriter to the director, is ran by white men, straight white men. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with you having a job because everybody needs to eat. It's just that where it becomes a problem is when certain individuals, you get up all in your feelings and you're like, well, what's wrong? Why do you have enough diversity? Isn't there enough? Where does it stop? Why you get up on your feelings? First of all, I'm gonna have to say I get pretty pissed off and annoyed that you don't see where we coming from. That these groups of people, LGBT, black, brown people, white women, non-straight, you don't even understand where we coming from. I'm gonna say, motherfucker, you can be on some bullshit when we're trying to tell you something specifically. But here's the thing. Let me give an example. When let me address certain individuals in the comment section. I'm not gonna say your names because I think that's kind of disrespectful to call you out, and I don't know you like that. But to me, you're on some bullshit when you're saying, well, where does it stop? Or why can't white men have that? No. I don't want to hear that bullshit when you can't even portray people right. Let me give you an example. Where diversity is bad is where it does not make sense to put lesbians in an event in a period of history in somewhere in South America. Let's say you make a movie about some Toltec Indians in South America during the 1500s. It does not make sense to put gay people and trans people where they did not exist in that tribe. It does not make sense to put hermaphrodites and disabled people in a historical film about the Chinese Wall. Okay, it does not make sense to put some people from Greenland in ancient Egypt in 500 BC about the building of the Sphinx, where the only people who were really present were Persians, Greeks, and black people. It does not make sense. Just because I feel discriminated against. If there is a movie about Vietnamese people fighting the Viet Cong, the Viet Cong army, and it doesn't make sense to put a bunch of Muslims there and some Pakistani people just because they feel discriminated against, because mofo, y'all weren't there back in 1940. It makes sense to put white people, black people, and maybe some Asian folks if they look Vietnamese in that particular time. It does not make sense. Or it doesn't make sense to put Chinese people in World War II if they were not present, which your Asian people were fighting in the World War. But I'm just saying, like, you gotta, that's where diversity, it does not make sense. It doesn't make sense to put them in places where they didn't exist, or it was really out of place, just because some with this you need to appease certain ethnic groups. It does not make sense. That's where it gets ridiculous. Okay? And let me get my biggest gripe. Black superheroes. Why were people tripping over that, right? Black superheroes, I've been telling people for the longest, right? Hollywood has banged out negative stereotypes, gang members, criminals, slaves, negative portrayals of black people for decades. Okay? Black superheroes. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Steel, 1997. Blank Man, 1993. Meteor Man, 1994. Blade, 1998. Spawn, 1997. Why? What makes those different? Adding diversity in like imagery and culture versus Black Panther. Why? Because the thing is, first of all other black superheroes, certain white males and white people, some of them had a problem because we black people were like, oh my gosh, Black Panther's the shit. And we were like, oh, we didn't forgot about Blade. You know, people barely remember Blade sometimes if you weren't there a fan 20 years ago. But why? What was the difference? Well, first of all, you have superheroes who were fighting gangs and mob bosses in the ghetto. Black people are more than just ghettos, living in ghettos, okay? The other thing is called, there's this thing in the black community when we see movies that's called the magical Negro. Who's the representation of the magical Negro? The magical Negro would be like Spawn and Blade. You don't know where they came from, you don't know their past, you don't know how they got to be, you know how they got their powers, you know they just have them here, they're here. And they're the only thing black about them is their suit, their voice, and their likeness. You don't know anything around them. And another thing is like there's always this need to put some kind of supporting white male or white person in a mentor or a position of influence power over that main black character to kind of counterbalance it. Or sometimes you often try to make the black person gay, especially if it's a male, or you just add female to it because I don't know what it is. Because the thing is, and you find out the directors are white men or whatever. Not all the time, but sometimes I tend to see that a lot. If it's like we're not going to put a straight black male without adding some type of twist to it. Like unless you're going to add some, there has to be a white person in charge, or there has to be either mentor or teacher or master, or the need to make the guy gay or submissive, or some not a strong male that people identify, because you don't want anything that's kind of because it's just gonna make people uncomfortable. No. The thing with Black Panther is that you have a lot of this stuff. You don't have too many. You don't have there's a positive portrayal of Africans. There is, with the exception of African American Killmonger, but you have a strong straight male black superhero. You know his past. It makes sense what his background is. He's in Africa. It's a culture, and it's being portrayed right and positively. And he's fighting his enemies, and he's rising against his protagonist. His antagonist. My conjecture is that when it's slaves, gang members, pimps, and thugs, nobody has a problem with it. When it's something positive, then sometimes I notice, and they often tend to be white people, you have a problem with something positive, or we're portrayed accurately and authentically. If you don't want to be called out for your lack of diversity in culture, image, race, ethnicity representation in movies, stop putting out negative shit. Because if, let's say you go to see 8 slave movies, I'm going to begin to think you like seeing yourself controlling and owning people. I'm gonna if there's nothing but slave movies, gang members, black people who are, I'm gonna begin to think that you like doing perverted, negative things and imagery to African people. Like, and I'm gonna make a movie about black folks and characters, but they're either gonna be, because there's this thing you don't want to pay completely straight black. Now I don't know why that is. If just a certain thing, I don't know. There's always some type of twist to it. Not that there can't be women, trans, gay people, but there's always a twist to a thing with the straight black male. There's always, if there's a straight black male in a movie, there's always a twist to it. You always got to put like you always got to put like a white best friend, mentor, person who's above him or influencing him, or there's always something to counterbalance the straight black male masculinity in that movie, or there's just he's there but there's no twist to it. There's no he's out of place. He's just in the movie, but you don't know his past. Like he's the only black person in the movie out of his 8 non-black friends. It's something weird. See, the thing is, if you don't want to be all up in your feelings, if you're a white guy, you get mad that people are calling y'all out in Hollywood for your lack of, how come there's no representation of white women, women of color, trans women, men of color, then why don't you stop having a problem when we make our own movies? These groups, why don't you stop getting offended? Because you're really telling on yourself when you're getting offended by our certain groups who actually want to do our own stuff, who want to portray ourselves positively and more so accurately, even if it's a bad thing. You're really telling on yourself, because really when I see you go, I'm gonna just say, you like to have control over people's stories. You like to tell stuff that is, you like to put what you think about what another group of people's story is. Let me tell you something. When you see white women having an uproar about shit y'all putting out, that's very telling. And you have a problem with white women portraying their own stuff accurately. That's very telling. I find that's very telling. But that's just the whole story. So I mean, but back to stuff about when diversity. But either you stop having a problem and stop trying to, in some cases, stop trying to sabotage other groups of people, genders, and sexualities and portray their stories. Stop trying to fuck them over. Stop trying to take control. Stop trying to be some type of influence to stop curve the narrative to where you want it because you don't like it, because you don't have no control over, say, what they do, because you'll be outshined. You're really telling on yourself. You really are. And if I had a friend who was a director and you had a problem, literally, I want to kick your ass and smack you in the face for having a problem with some shit that it really is my story. Literally. If you have a problem with another group of people who want to portray themselves accurately, honestly, or more positively, and you have a negative reaction to that, I feel like I want to just deck you in the face for having a problem with something where it doesn't make. Just like Luke Cage on Netflix, the guy who plays, there were certain individuals who had a problem that said it was too black. It was too black. So to tell me you had a problem with a black guy, his character didn't like be called a nigga. He didn't want to be a criminal no more. He didn't want to be looked at as a criminal, as a dangerous black guy. He wanted to have a legit job and life. Some of y'all had a problem with that. You had a problem, let's say, with the Black Panther because it had an African culture. There was no poverty in the movie. It didn't show black people eating flies off their ass. You had a problem because there wasn't negative stuff that you're used to seeing in that movie? You're really telling me something. And if you're getting hurt feelings because I call some bullshit out, trust me, I will hurt your feelings a whole lot more than what I'm doing now. You're really telling on yourself if that's what you have an issue with. Something that's more accurately, even if it's a bad thing, because it's not because we actually accurate in the storyline. Are you fucking kidding me? Nigga, what the fuck, man? I hate to say that, but really, because the thing is, let's say, for example, if you like seeing a slave movie, if you like seeing 8 slave movies, and the only slave movie you had a problem with it was the slave movie of African people freeing themselves, that means, okay, you like to see slave movies where you like seeing docile Africans doing what their slave master telling them to do. You have no problem with that. You love that movie. Oh, it's a masterpiece. Oh, I want 8 of those. I want Django 1, 2. I want 12 Years a Slave Part 6. But you didn't like Django. And even with that, never mind. But you didn't like Django? You had and here's the thing. There was a documentary a guy named Tariq Nasheed made. It was about the Haitian Revolution. It was about black Haitian people rising against the French army because they didn't want to be under the subjugation of the French and their related slave masters. Did you know some people had a problem with that? They had a problem with that. Even some black folks had a problem with that because I don't know, whatever. But see, you mean you'd have a problem with people telling their real events and storylines and being positive and them rising against their opposition, but you have no problem going to another groups of people's history and writing it the way you want it, to where you're dominating and controlling them, whether it be in the movie, the storyline, but you have a problem when other people take control of their narrative and it's actually portraying themselves accurately and honestly. If you have a problem with that, that is grounds for me wanting to kick your ass. Really, it's stupid. But that's how I feel about it. And that's how I honestly feel. That's kind of dumb and stupid if you get that angry because you're not in control of something, or you're not represented in a place to where it doesn't make sense to have you there. That's pretty dumb. You're really telling on yourself. But I'm gonna get off here because that kind of thing makes me kind of angry anyway. But I'm out.